but there's a lot of doubt when you see people that you used to be going to class with, they're like accelerating their careers, or they're becoming like directors or VPs, and just knowing that you are on your own journey and that the only person that you need to prove your worth to is really yourself. And I think I got over that after maybe a year or two. That was hard because you're like, I am leaving something that others would consider to be very attractive or successful, but the definition of success just was changing for me.
I want to welcome Zack Novak to what I'm starting to call Career Pivot Corner, an interview series where I interview people about their own individual career pivot stories. I try and share mine on my own content, but I think there's a ton of value in sharing other people's stories. Everyone's journey offers a unique perspective. His individual pivot story is an interesting one, going from investment banking into the software startup space in Calgary. But then also he's built a community and has either witnessed or helped support a lot of other people make similar pivots in the tech, a lot of people from the energy industry into the tech industry. So welcome to Zack. Do you want to get started by introducing yourself briefly and sharing what your initial pivot was?
Thanks for having me here. The backstory for me is I'm from Calgary. I went to school in Ontario and I took a degree in business and engineering because I thought, hey, that might make me the most employable. And then in my school, there was this like push for investment banking and management consulting in the business school. And got more interested in that and actually left investment banking to go in-house corporate. So I worked in corporate development and I was like, I'm interested in startups. And then I just kept doing all this research about startups. Just understanding why technology is so interesting is because it's the blend of technology and people that allows us to think more creatively. I just started investigating more. And there was this program, it was like the first cohort full stack development program. I didn't even know what that was, but I quit my job, did it, started learning how to code because I didn't know how to get in. And then through the program, I started networking quite a bit. I learned more about product. And just through networking, I met a gentleman who had a company called Actionable in the organizational behavior change space. We met a couple of times and he's just like, hey, if you want to fly out to Toronto, we're doing a couple design sprints. You can come join us. And I flew out. And then he's like, we do these design sprints, which are incredible experiences, probably some of the most interesting weeks of my life. And he's like, I need someone to design this. Can you design it? And I became like a designer, no design experience, and then worked my way into a product role from there.
Did you go out there as an employee or just like say, hey, if you're interested, come out and learn? I was curious how people wiggle their way in, whether it's kind of like voluntary curiosity.
It was totally, so yeah, it was like a voluntary thing, but I was like, just over the moon to be able to do that. I think it's a unique experience to start your technology career. I wasn't really getting paid until I started doing this kind of contract design work, but doing 2 design sprints, and they're like the most fun things ever. So I got this, I think, misconstrued view of what the tech world's all about, because you're like in this room, sticky notes and whiteboards and bouncing ideas off each other. I'm like, man, if this is every day in tech.
That's awesome.
This is awesome. But yeah, I look back at that and it's just a weird story.
And what do you recommend to people that are trying to pivot in where they may not have the exact, background that the company's looking for?
Yeah, I think most people pivot in, at least in the world that I live in, by knowing someone or doing something, like versus applying. What I thought worked really well for me is I was very clear about the type of problems I wanted to solve. I wanted people to work better together at work, and Actionable was completely aligned in that. And the founder saw the passion I had for that.
That must make a difference, because I feel sometimes I work with clients or just talk to people and they're like, I want to work in tech, or even I want to work for Tesla. It's like this big machine, and it's like, that's a broad, tech's a broad thing, even these big companies are broad things, but it's like, if they want to be a global supply manager at Tesla, like that's like such a different conversation to have. Or I want to solve this type of problem.
100% agree. The more you can be specific, the easier it is for people to help you. So I was like, I want to work in product. This is why I think I'm good at product. I want to solve these types of problems. Your company is aligned with that. So the founder is thinking, okay, I don't have this product role currently. Should I have that person in the product role? Why would I hire this person? Like, versus, I was just talking to a gentleman the other day, and they say he works at a venture builder. He says people come to their company all the time being like, hey, I want to join, I want to add value. And they're like, well, okay, but like, do you want this idea that other people decide where you fit is just, it doesn't work. And a
Yeah.
lot of people reach out to me being like, here's my CV. Do you think there's a role for me? Which is really, you're copping out on the work. The true work is you figuring out where you fit and then making it very clear to the employer why you'd be good at that role.
Right.
So I agree with that. And I think the more specific you get in your networking, the easier it is for people to be like, okay, these are the three people I could connect you with. If it's broad, it's just too difficult to place you.
There is a phase of exploration maybe in the beginning before we're trying to figure out there's a big landscape of opportunities. It's good to explore the landscape. But once you do need to narrow in and like focus on one job title, small subset of companies or industries. Go
I'll
ahead.
just like quickly add, like I was working with a coach during that time, and my coach did this wonderful thing. Like we're doing all this coaching talking, and then eventually he like wrote down everything he heard and he broke it down into like activities of my values and my purpose. And he wrote that out. And I started just comparing that to postings. And I felt like that having that written down made it very clear to me what type of roles fit and what they didn't.
I think reflection is hard. It's like an easy thing to say, but it's like even in this modern world, we're all moving so fast. There's not a lot of time to be introspective. And I think there's weird judgments we put on ourselves. Like if you're career pivoting after 10 years or more, it's like it brings into question like why you were doing it or something. You have to question that a little bit. If you want to do something different, is it wrong what you're doing before? And some of those questions are really hard to answer. Maybe it was theoretically wrong for you, but also maybe it's just like a new chapter in your life. Even for me, like Tesla didn't exist when I graduated engineering school. So I don't know, maybe I should have gone to work in Silicon Valley, but maybe not. Maybe just like that wasn't the path I was ready for. And I try not to do it too much. But the reflection stuff is hard. It's hard work. And I think a lot of people are excited to do something else, something different. But I also try and ask people the question, are you running away from something or running towards it? And without doing like a little bit of like reflection, you may not really know the answer to that question. And you may land at a new job and a new role, but you might end up in the same place, if that makes sense, if you don't do some of that work first.
Totally. I totally agree. Ultimately, what I'm really interested in for myself and for others is trying to feel fulfilled in my work. But in order to do that, I need to understand what fulfills me or what fills me up or what difference I want to make in the world. And I totally agree with you that it changes. We are humans and we evolve.
Yeah.
So as someone that continues to pivot my career, I imagine there will be many more pivots in the future as well.
What was the hardest part of the pivot, like going from investment banking into this tech world? Was there specific time or a specific skill set adapting to the culture? What was the hardest part, you think?
I think ego. So you like move from, so the business school I went to is like considered one of the best or the best business schools. And then you end up in investment banking. There's just like this prestige component to it. Like you're getting paid pretty much better than everyone else. You're working way harder though. And then I remember in my coding boot camp, like I'm sitting with this diverse group, but like one of the people that worked there was like, she's 18, she worked at Safeway, that's like the grocery store. And it was through that experience where I just realized that we are all the same. But there's a lot of doubt when you see people that you used to be going to class with, they're like accelerating their careers, or they're becoming like directors or VPs, or they're running companies. And just knowing that you are on your own journey and that the only person that you need to, what's the word I'm looking for, to prove your worth to is really yourself. And I think I got over that after maybe a year or two. I think I'm like well over it now, but that's hard because you're like, I am leaving something that others would consider to be very attractive or successful, but the definition of success just was changing for me.
Yeah. Oh, I can empathize with that a lot. I think, yeah, the ego part, and I think it's part of my program. I talk about it because like if you've been working at a job for 5 or 10 years, it's like you're good at it. You might be an expert, you have some level of mastery, you have a good reputation likely. And there is like a lot of identity and like pride or ego or whatever tied up in that. And then just like to go back and start from scratch reputationally from some expertise, and oof, that's hard. And like I remember having to ask like the interns at Tesla to help me do all kinds of basic stuff, like how to use the internal systems, like where to find the conference rooms, and like everything just felt difficult. And when you're used to being good at your job, that's really hard thing to take. And it's not just a month or two, it might take 6 months or even 2 years to really start to master a new craft and rebuild that reputation and some of that expertise. But that's a hard thing to do. Like, I think I call it the career pivot penalty is the way I've started rebranding it. And it's, you had to be ready to pay that. And it's not just money necessarily. It's like the ego or identity is part of it, and be willing to go through that ditch for maybe even a couple of years to come out the other side, to reinvent yourself maybe.
Yeah, totally. I was fortunate that the founder of the company had a couple kind of consultants slash coaches help me. They're moving the business into a more product focused business. So I was fortunate, but I was like on my own too. I was leaning into was meeting other product people. But yeah, pay is a big thing as well. Like I, on a cash comp basis, was making less than 20% of what I was making in the job before. That started swinging up pretty quickly afterwards, but that like, you have those like really inflated investment banking salary to like, I was working at a startup and there's some equity components. So I'm just talking about the cash end, but it was like a big shift. And I think people, particularly that are coming from in Calgary, oil and gas, there's this mindset of I'm worth so much per hour, but there is this couple year. What I see is after 2 years, people are getting back to more comfortable salaries. You gotta have to be willing to take that dip for a year, especially in these like non-big tech markets. I don't know if that's different in Silicon Valley, but you have to have a long-term game of, yes, I'm making less today, but I'm looking for both making money and doing work that I love.
Yeah. There's similar dynamics. The salaries are higher here, but the cost of living is like outrageous too. So some of those things like kind of balance out. And I've tried to like the career pivot penalty. I've tried to call like the career pivot investment. It's like, it is going to cost you something, right? Like financially and from a time, reputational, but it's like a reinvestment in your growth, like especially if you're doing something you're excited and engaged in. And then I do tell people that it's important to find a company that's growing, because if you're in a company that has the pie is expanding and you're a capable individual that's working hard, that's excited about the mission, it's just very likely that your growth will be re-propelled as you get up to speed. And in some ways, or like when Tesla went from one factory in one country to 4 factories on 3 continents, there's just so much opportunity. It's like I only want to do this little piece right here. There's more opportunity than I could handle. And so that being in that place is important, but it still takes a couple of years to make that investment and kind of recover, because there will be a dip. Yeah. Thanks, Zack. And thanks. It's been great to get to know you and to get aligned. We're aligned on a lot of the things we're trying to build in different parts of the world in a little bit of different way, but on very similar journeys. So it's been great to get to know you. Thanks again.
I like those.